We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast. This is Abe, your host. Well, if you listened to last episode, I was having some car trouble. We went, after Sammy got off work, to the store, the AutoZone or O'Reilly's. Doesn't matter, one of the two. Got it tested. They hooked it up. Wasn't the alternator, it wasn't the battery, and it wasn't the starter. So the guy asked me like, when was the last time I got spark plugs or a fuel pump? And I ain't gonna lie, it's been a minute. I don't usually take my car to the shop unless there's like, I feel a difference in it, you know? So we made an appointment. We're taking the car to the shop tomorrow. Today, Sammy wanted to go to the fair, but dude, I was running on like 4 hours of sleep, and I'm like, I really don't want to be strapped into mechanical death machines in general that they put up in one day. I'm not gonna lie, I don't like fairs, I don't like roller coasters, I don't like Kings Island, Busch Gardens, and I've been like that since I was a kid, you know. I don't know, it's just, I think it was just from watching like 90s shows of like how people get their heads cut off. And I remember hearing a story about some girl who rode Moon Mountain in Disneyland when it first opened, and she got her head cut off. And yeah, or seeing videos of people stuck in roller coasters upside down for like 8 hours and shit like that. Like, no, I'm good. And the fair is even worse. Like, you're basically putting those machines up in one day, and you're having a bunch of like stoned drug addict carnies, not trying to be mean, running the machines. And this is Garrett County, which I don't know if anyone of the listeners are from Kentucky, but Garrett County's sketchy, man. Like, they have this like UFO ride that I used to ride, which was my favorite ride, obviously, because I love UFOs. And you walk up this ramp into the UFO, and then the door closes and it spins, and you're like stuck against the wall. And we have like a large redneck population around here that thought it'd be funny to throw an open blade into the center of it and watch where it landed. And since then I was like, oh cool, thanks for ruining like one of the few rides that I ride at the fair. I guess the only other ride that I like is like, there's this spinning one that's fun. They used to call it like the Sandstorm or something like that at Busch Gardens, but I don't know, man. I mean, and everyone's like, oh, you're just being a pussy, you know, and it's like, dude, my mom rode a ride. I can't remember which one it was, and she should have sued. It was at Universal Studios or Busch Gardens, and she got off the ride and she kept seeing flashes and getting real sick. And it lasted for a while till she had to go to the doctor. It turned out she like ripped the inside of her eye from being jarred around too much. And like to this day she sees flashes and stuff, you know. It's like, man, if you would have sued, we could have been millionaires right now. But yeah, taking the car to the shop tomorrow. I had some extra time on my hand. Today's my day off, and I had some energy in me, so I figured I'd do a podcast. Now, this podcast in particular is dedicated to the Anchor listeners, the Breaker listeners, the audio only listeners. No offense to YouTube, but I had 206 subscribers and like none of them transferred over to the new channel. And I gave them a link and everything. So, but the reason why this is dedicated to the audio listeners is because um, the I was looking at my Anchor because I put it out through Anchor, and for some reason I don't know why the Native American Ghost Stories is like the highest rated episode. And I remember doing that episode, and um, we had more ghost stories that were Native American. I remember at the end of the episode saying, we can do a part 2 if you guys want. Just hit me up in the comments. But it, for some reason, was a heavy hitter, so I figured I'd do part 2 for you all. I mean, I try to pay attention to that type of stuff. I try to do what I want to do, but I also try to mix it up for everybody. Try to throw in a little bit of something for everybody. Here lately, I've just been reporting mostly on like, um, you know, like the current most conspiracy news. By the way, I didn't mean not everybody transferred over. I do have 16 subs on the new channel, and I appreciate you all. I don't want you thinking I'm bitching about you all. I'm just bitching about YouTube, and it kind of sucks for like working on a channel for 4 years, gaining up to 200 subs, and then like nobody wants to transfer over to the new channel, and it sucks, man. But I'm not talking about my subs on the new YouTube channel. I appreciate you all. Um, but yeah, everybody, like, for some reason on it wasn't so much on YouTube, but it was on Anchor. When I checked my Anchor, like, this was the highest rated episode was the Native American Ghost Story. So I was like, all right, I'll do another one. But this is part 2 of Native American Ghost Stories. I hope y'all enjoy. Now, the first story we have is the Land of the Dead, and this is the Serrano Native Americans. A great hunter brought home a wife. They loved each other and were very happy. But the man's mother hated the young wife. And one day when the husband was out hunting, she put a sharp, pointy object in the wife's seat. And the woman sat down upon it and was killed. The woman immediately brought brush and piled it up. They put her body on it and burned it. And by the time her husband returned that night, the body was all consumed. See, I didn't know Native Americans believed in cremation. I guess this particular tribe did, the Serranos. The man went to the burning place and stayed there motionless. Curls of dust rose and whirled about the charred spot. He watched them all night and all day. At evening they grew larger, and at last one larger than all the rest whirled round and round the burned spot. It set off down the road, and he set off after it. When it was quite dark, he saw the dust he was following was his wife, but she would not speak to him. She was leading him in the direction of the rock past which all dead people go. If they had lived bad lives, the rock falls on them and crushes them. When they came to it, she spoke to her husband. "We are going to the place of the dead people," she told him. "I will take you on my back so that you will not be seen and recognized as one of the living." Thus they traveled until they came to a river that the dead have to ford. This was very dangerous for the man because he was not dead, but the woman kept him on her back, and they came through safely. The woman went directly to her people and her parents and brothers and sisters who had died before. They were glad to see her, but they did not like the man, for he was not dead. The woman pleaded for him, however, and they let him stay. Special food always had to be cooked for him, because he could not eat what dead people live on. And in the daytime he could see nothing. It was as if he were alone all day long. Only in the night did he see his wife and the other people. Now that kind of reminds me like the river Styx almost. And you'll see that with mythology in general, that you can read any mythology, Celtic, Gaelic, Norse, Native American, Greek. They all tell the same stories, you know. When the dead were going hunting, they took him along and stationed him on the trail the deer would take. Presently he heard them shouting, "The deer, the deer," and he knew they were shouting to him that the deer were coming in his direction. But he could see nothing. Then he looked again and spotted 2 little black beetles, which he knocked over. When all the people had come up, they praised him for his hunting. After that, the dead did not complain about his presence. That didn't make sense. Little what? Okay. They did not feel sorry for him. It's not time for him to die yet, they said. He has had a hard time here. The woman ought to go back with him. So they arranged for both of them to return, and they instructed the man and the woman to have nothing to do with each other for 3 nights after they were back on earth. 3 nights for the dead, however, meant 3 years for the living. Not aware of this, the husband and wife returned to earth and remained continent for 3 nights. The following evening they embraced, and when the husband woke on the morning of the 4th day, he was alone. Alright, before we get on to the next story, I just wanted to let you all know that where my old channel on YouTube was deleted, I will put a link to part 1 of this Native American ghost stories. At the end of the video, you can click on it while the cast is rolling. Also, if you guys are new to this YouTube channel that you're hearing this on, I used to have a channel for 4 years. I have all the Conspiracy Corner podcast playlist open to the public on this channel. If you go and click into the profile, there's like 105 episodes on there. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll get on to the next story. The Double-Faced Ghost, and this is from the Cheyenne tribe. There was a ghost who was immensely tall, with arms and legs of colossal length. He had 2 faces, one looking forward and one looking backward, and for this reason he was called the Double-Faced Ghost. He was not too bad for a ghost, that is. He was so big that he could step over the widest rivers and over hills too. He was also a mighty hunter, since he could catch any game that came in sight with his wonderfully long arms. But in spite of his talents, Double-Face was not happy because he could not find himself a suitable wife. One day he came upon a tent standing all by itself in the middle of a prairie. In it lived a man, his wife, and their daughter, who was young and beautiful. Hiding behind a hill, the Double-Faced Ghost saw the girl from afar and immediately fell in love with her. He said to himself, "I must have her for a wife. Of course, she might not want me, and her father, too, might think that she and I are ill-matched. So I'll start by supplying this family with so much good fat meat that they'll see what a fine husband I'd make." The ghost went hunting and caught a lot of game with his long arms. Every morning in the darkness before dawn, he brought a great load of meat and left it in front of the tepee. The parents of the girl were delighted and wondered what hunter was giving them all this fine red meat. The father said, "I must find out who is doing this kindness." But he never caught a glimpse of the Double-Faced Ghost. Yet morning after morning, there was a new load of meat stacked up before the tepee, more than the 3 people could eat, even if the dogs also had their fill. At last their father dug himself a hole behind a clump of bushes, crept into it on a moonlit night, and stayed awake to watch. Before dawn he saw the double-faced ghost come, leave his load of meat, and go away. The man went back to his family, trembling with fear. He told his wife and daughter to strike the tent and pack up, because it was a terrible monster who had been bringing the meat. The three got away as fast as they could, and the next morning, Doubleface had found the tent gone. He waited until it was light and followed their tracks. With his long legs, he soon overtook them. "Wait, wait, good people," Doubleface shouted. "I mean you no harm. I have only kind feelings towards you." In a few more strides he came level with the fleeing family. "Stop, stop," he cried. "Let's sit down and talk." What could the three people do? Though very much afraid, they sat down. The ghost towered over them. "You were kind to leave us all that meat," the man said. "But what do you want from us?" "I am in love with your daughter," said the double-faced one. "I want her for a wife." Naturally, the father was not willing to give her to a ghost. And the daughter would not have gone, even if her father had asked it. After all, what girl wants a husband 10 times taller than she, with one face looking forward and one looking backward? On the other hand, the father did not want to make this giant angry, so he said, "You are indeed kind and handsome, and a mighty hunter too. Who wouldn't want a man like you for his daughter? What daughter wouldn't be happy with a man like you? Now I'm sure you know the custom of my people in such matters." "What custom?" asked the double-faced ghost. "Well, we always play hide the plumpet. If the suitor wins, he gets the girl. If he doesn't, he gives something of value." "Really?" said the ghost. "I've never heard of this custom. Sounds unusual." "Not at all," said the father. "We had it since the world began, and we must stick to it or suffer great misfortunes." "Well, in that case, let's play." "You are wise and an accommodating man," said the father. "As I said, if you win, I will give you my daughter. But if you lose, you will go on, leaving a pile of meat for us in the morning, though maybe only every other day." What the double-faced ghost didn't know was that the father was the best at the hidden plumpet player in the world. They played. The father's hands were so quick that the ghost could not follow them and locate the pit. On top of that, the girl and her mother drummed and sang funny songs which distracted him, so the father won easily. Double-faced ghost accepted his loss and went bringing meat as long as the people lived, even after the daughter married. As I said, he wasn't bad for a ghost. Now this is a journey to the skeleton house from the Hopi Indians. Halaksai and Shangopavi, where the people were first living, a curious young man would often sit at the edge of the village looking at the graveyards. He wondered what became of the dead, if they really continued to live somewhere else. He asked his father, who could tell him very little. His father was the village chief, and he said that he would speak to the other chiefs and to his assistants about it. He asked the village criers whether they knew anything that would help his son. "Yes," they said. "Badger, old man, has the medicine that will answer his questions." So they called Badger, old man, and when he arrived, they said, "This young man is thinking about the dead, whether they live anywhere. You know about it, and you have the medicine that can show him." "Very well," he said. "I'll go get my medicine." Ha ha, this is sounding like he's going to trip balls. So he went to the house, looked over his medicines, and finally found the right one. "This is it," he said, and took it to the village chief. "Very well," he said. "Tomorrow, put a white kilt on your son and then blacken his chin with toho, with black shale, and tie a small eagle feather to his forehead. These are the very preparations used for the dead. The next morning they dressed the young man in this way, and Badger Old Man spread a white awa on the floor, and told the young man to lie on it. He gave the young man some medicine to eat, and also placed medicine in his ears and on his heart. Then he wrapped him in a robe, whereupon the young man, after moving a little, died. Quote unquote. This is the medicine, Badger Old Man said. If he hears this, he will go far away, and he will also come back again. He wanted to see something and find out something, and with this medicine he will do just that. After the young man had fallen asleep, he saw a path leading westward. It was a road to a skeleton house. The path he followed, and after a while he met a woman sitting by the roadside. "What have you come for?" She asked the young man. "I have come," he replied, "to find out about your life here." "Yes," the other one said. "I didn't follow the straight road. I did not listen, and now I have to wait here. After a certain number of days, I can go on a little, then I can go on again. But it will be a long time before I get to the skeleton house." She pointed to an enclosure of sticks, which was all the house and protection she had. From here the path led westward through the large cactus and agave plants, so full that sometimes they hid the way. He finally arrived at the rim of a steep bluff where a chief was sitting. He was Juanita, and he had a white line around his right eye and a big horn for a headdress. He also asked the young man why he had come, and the latter told him. "Very well," the chief said. "Away, over there is the house that you are looking for." But a great deal of smoke in the distance hid the house from the young man's view. The chief spread the young man's kilt on the ground, placed the young man on it, and lifted it up, holding it over the precipice. The chief threw it forward, whereupon the kilt carried the young man slowly down like a giant bird. Almost reminds me of a flying carpet. When he had arrived on the ground below the bluff, he put on his kilt again and proceeded. In the distance he saw a column of smoke rising. After he had proceeded a distance, he came upon Skeleton Woman and asked her what the smoke was. "Some of those were wicked while they lived in the village were thrown in there," she said. "The bad chiefs send their people over this road, and then they are destroyed. They no longer exist. You must not go there," she added. "Keep on this road and go straight ahead toward Skeleton House." Now that reminds me of hell, but at least they're kind of like the Egyptians. Like, if you do bad, you just cease to exist, rather than kind of the Christian mindset of burning in eternal flame forever and ever and ever. So, I mean, at least it's merciful. When at last he arrived at Skeleton House, he did not see anyone except a few children playing there. "Oh," they said, "here a skeleton has come." And by the time he went into the village, all the people, or skeletons, rather, living there, had heard about him and gathered to stare. "Who are you?" they asked the young man. "I am the village chief's son. I came from Shangopavi." So they pointed toward the Bear Clan, saying, "Those are the people that you want to see. They are your ancestors." The skeleton took him over to the house. The rungs of ladder were made of sunflower stems, and the first rung broke as soon as he stepped on it, though the skeletons went up and down the ladder with no trouble. "I shall have to stay down here," he said. "Bring me food and feed me here." So the skeletons brought him some melon, watermelon, and chukuviki. When they saw him eat it, they laughed at him. They are lighter than air because they never eat the food, but only its odor or soul. Now that, man, we've covered that before on how people have in previous podcasts how they put out offerings and of food, and literally like a human would come up and eat the offering, and it would be like it would either like disintegrate in their hands or have like zero flavor, which is, I think there's something to that. And that is the reason why the clouds into which the dead are transformed are not heavy and can float in the air. That's kind of cool. So they believe that the clouds are like souls. That's dope. I kind of like that theory. The food itself, the skeletons threw out behind the houses, which is where they got his meal. When he had finished, they asked him what he had come for. He said, "I was wondering whether skeletons live somewhere. I told my father I wanted to go find out, and he dressed me up in this way, and Badger Old Man gave me some medicine to make it happen. So that's what you have come for. Well, look at us." Then they added, "It's not light here. It's not as light as where you live. We actually live poorly here. You cannot stay with us here yet. Your flesh is still strong and salty. You still eat food. We eat only the odor of the food. But when you go back, you must work there for us. Make nakwak wosis for us at the soil ceremony. These we tie around our foreheads, and they represent dropping rain. We shall work for you here too. We shall send you rain and crops. You must wrap up the awa women when they die, and tie the big knotted belt around them, because these awas are not tightly woven. When the skeletons move along on them through the sky as clouds, the thin rain drops through these awas, and the big raindrops fall from the fringes of the big belt. Sometimes you cannot see the clouds distinctly because they are hidden behind the nakwak wosis, just as our faces are hidden behind them. So it's kind of like a veil, I would imagine. Looking around, the young man saw some of the skeletons walking around with huge burdens on their backs. These were mealing stones, which they carried by a thin string over their forehead that had cut deeply into the skin. Others carried bundles of cactus on their backs, and as they had no clothes on, the thorns of the cactus hurt them. He was told that some had to submit to such punishments for a certain length of time. I like that too, that it's not for eternity, just for a little bit of time. Sorry, can you tell my dad was a preacher? I still got that ingrained paranoia of hell. Then were relieved from them and could live with the others. At another place in the skeleton house, he saw the chiefs who had been here in this world and had made a good road for other people. They had taken tiponis, their protective medicine, and set them up there. And when the people here in the village have their ceremonies and smoke during the ceremonies, the smoke goes down into the other world, to the tiponis, or mothers, and from there rises up in the form of clouds. After the young man had seen everything and satisfied his curiosity, he set off to his own village. When he arrived at the steep bluff, he again mounted his kilt, and a slight breeze lifted him up. He met with the Juanita chief, who told him, "Your father and mother are mourning for you now, so you better return home." This was the last person he met on his way back. When he had just about arrived at his house, his body, which was still lying under the covering in the room where he had fallen asleep, began to move as they joined once more, and it came to life again. So he had an out-of-body experience. This is a nice story, man, to end on, definitely. It's trippy. They removed the covering, and Badger, Old Man, wiped his body, washed the paint off his face, and discharmed him. Then he sat up. They fed him and asked him what he found out. He recounted all of his experiences in detail. The woman with the house of brush, the Juanita sheaf, and his flight on a kilt, and all about the skeleton house, the skeletons with the heavy burdens of cactus and stones, and even the skeleton's food. I have seen it all myself now, and I shall remember it. We are living in the light here. They are living in the dark there. No one should desire to go there. Then he told them about the Naquaquosis and Bajos. If we make prayer offerings for them, they will provide rain and crops and food for us. Thus we shall assist each other. Very well, they all said. Very well. So that is the way. And so they returned to their homes wiser than before. And from that time the living and the dead began to work together for the benefit of both. That's pretty cool, though, the whole astral projecting after taking basically a psychedelic, it sounded like. Yeah, I don't know. I have a book on near-death experiences. I haven't started reading it. I should start getting into it and sharing some of the stories. It's written from an actual doctor, like a medical perspective, so maybe if you guys are interested in near-death experiences, I haven't covered that on this channel yet. Hit me up in the comments and let me know. That'd be cool. But I think we're going to wrap it up there. I hope you all enjoyed, and this was dedicated to the audio listeners on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcast, Radio Public. We appreciate it, and Spotify. You all have a good day.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.